Hello everyone, this is the TinyHawk S from Emax. It's 1 and 2S capable. The F4 flight controller with an OSD also includes the ESCs. It has a 37-channel 25mW VTX, 600 TV line CMOS camera. It features new lightweight 8025 15,000 kV motors, Emax Avon 4-bladed props that work for turtle mode, so you can flip over after a crash. Motor connectors now come in through the side, instead of vertically like the original. The spurs connecting the motor mounting to the rest of the hoop frame are now wider and they flare out more for better durability. It comes pre-tuned with 2 profiles, one for 1S and one for 2S. I'm getting 76mm motor post to motor post. It weighs 27 3/4 grams. It's a little bit lighter than the original. It comes with 2 batteries, 450 milliamp 1S battery and a 300 milliamp 2S battery. It also comes with a USB charger for both type batteries. You get an extra set of props, 2 sets of stickers, 2 spare rubber bands for your battery mounting, a little tiny screwdriver, and extra grommet and screws. A big card warning you to switch profiles for 2S flight. It all comes in a nice little carrying case. As we get set to take off here, if you're new to FPV and you're wanting to get into quads, don't worry, you don't have to fly like this. I've been flying for a little over 3 years. This is just how I'm accustomed to, but it gives you some idea of the overall performance that you may be able to reach one day. I have a number of flights that we'll be showing, and some of these flights will be a little bit slower. It might be more appropriate for starting out, and I also show how you can fly in angle mode, especially when you're flying indoors and you have a smaller space. Angle mode is likely more appropriate. It's actually quite commonly used with even major pilots for tiny whoop races, and this is prop guarded just like a tiny whoop. You can fly it safely inside in your home around people. Do be aware that you could get long hair from people and pets tangled up in the props and the motor shafts, and you don't want that to happen. So do steer clear from anyone with long hair. It's really best until you're really comfortable that you just kind of stay away from people altogether, although this is a very, very safe quad. Again, those whoops that go around it will protect your home from taking any damage from propeller strikes. You'll also find that it's so light that if you bonk into something that it's not likely to damage anything at all. The flight time we're going to experience, even racing around, is going to be around the 4-minute marker, and I find that quite remarkable. You will note at the end of the flight the battery voltage, and some of you may want to change the power settings in beta flight in order to meet your goals for maintaining your batteries. But this is how I like to fly. I like to whiz around the house. You can see every now and again my 14-year-old son is home. It is summertime, and he is aged out of summer camps, but he still goes and does some athletic camps from time to time. But the TinyHawk comes pre-tuned, like I said, in the quick roll, and that can be a great boon for people wanting to get started in FPV, because PID tuning can be a little bit of a difficult thing to learn starting out. You don't know what the different settings do, and in this case, Emax is taking care of it. Both 1S and 2S comes with a tune already. They actually have rates set up as well, rate profile 1, rate profile 2. You should definitely try out those 2 rate profiles because you may find one really speaks to you. And if you don't, that's something that all of us have to tinker with, is our rate profiles. From time to time, even experienced pilots, championship pilots, they will take to changing their rates just to see if they're missing out on something, whether it's stick resolution or just comfort and feel. Emax has designed those new 4-bladed props so we can turtle mode appropriately, and I did find that even on slick surfaces it did turtle mode quite well. I did find that it turtle mode better front to back than it did side to side. One of the deficiencies that I did see was that the camera does still come dislodged from its mounting system, and so I would encourage you, and I'll show you back at the desk mine, you can glue that in, but don't use a permanent glue. Use something silicone based, something that's flexible, something that, so when you do have a crash, it will give a little bit. It's just less likely to become dislodged. It's actually relatively simple to get it back in place, but it can be an annoying feature that when you bump into something, that your camera now wobbles in flight back to you as you get ready to affix your camera again. The flight after this is going to be in angle mode, and it's a much different flight experience. Again, this is more appropriate for beginners or someone just getting started in FPV or just flying inside. You'll note that I'm not especially adept at angle mode, and angle mode, for those that aren't familiar, the flight controller does self-stabilization. So it's constantly wanting to bring the machine back to level. So if you let go of the sticks, say you get out of control, if you let go of the sticks and keeping your throttle at its current position, it will level out on its own, and then you can resume flight from there after you've regained control through that self-stabilization. There are 2 modes of self-stabilization available. There is angle and horizon. Angle mode is more restrictive, but you can change those settings as you get comfortable with them to where the angle of attack or the amount of angle you can apply to the quad is very limited, and there's a slider in Betaflight that allows you to change that. And there's also horizon mode. Horizon mode will allow you to do flips and rolls. They'll have to be quick flips and rolls. They won't be slow, big, looping flips and rolls. You'll have to do them pretty quick, and it will help you self-level. So if you're trying to work out the timing for doing flips and rolls, horizon mode is a mode you can use to train yourself for that timing. So you can see there in the lower right-hand corner how we're now in a stabilized mode. This is angle mode. And this is a much more suitable, as I said before, of a flight mode for those that are just getting started. You'll see it's a little less smooth for me, and that's because I'm quite used to flying in rate mode or acro mode in the house. But for someone starting out, it's perfectly acceptable. Flying FPV is all about having fun. And I find all flights fun, and I think that this is a hobby that more and more people need to be getting involved in because it is so much fun. You can fly these things in your home. You can fly them in your backyard, as I'll be showing shortly. You can take them to a fun fly in a gym. You can go to an armory. If you have an office space, you can fly these things all over the place. And that's kind of a big benefit of flying these smaller quads like the TinyHawk, is that they're safe, they're light, and you can fly them all over the place. And that allows you as a pilot to be able to get more time flying, and so you can improve to reach your goals in FPV, whether that's slow and steady, or if it's doing flippy floppies, or if it's racing around. Whatever your goals are, the more flight time you have, the quicker you'll progress to your goals. And you can see I get tangled up and stuff, and I bump around in this flight, and it's all good fun. Now that we have those spurs that are a little bit wider and they're flared out a little bit more in the end, the durability went right up. That was a nice little fix Emax did, because in the original TinyHawk I did break one of those spurs off. Of course, you can still fix these things quite easily with a little bit of glue. I use welder. Other people use E6000. I have links down below to both of them. Also batteries. This is not, I did not use the stock battery in either of the flights you see. I did use it, but you'll find the flight time is about 10, maybe 15% less on the stock battery than what I've shown in the flight footage that you've seen. And that's because I don't have a lot of 450 batteries. Most of my batteries are the 520s. And I just like to fly those because the weight difference is negligible. It gives you extra flight time, and flight time is fun time, so I just roll with it. But you can get close to 4 minutes of flight on the stock battery. It's all going to depend upon your how you're using the throttle, if you're flying outside or whether you're flying inside, if you're flying slower, if you're flying faster, or if you're pumping the throttle and doing bigger maneuvers than what I've shown in this video so far. So the flight time is a big variable, but in this video I do believe I give you an idea of what flight time would be like for a couple of different flight styles. I also have audio included in the video, and that is not from the stock machine. It's not through the DVR. What I do is I have a camera sitting on the table, and then I clap, or I make a visual representation so I can sync both the DVR that I'm showing you as well as the audio recording, which is actually a cell phone. And then when I video edit, I bring the audio from the cell phone into the DVR footage in order to give you some idea of how it sounds as well. I think that enhances the video a little bit and makes it more entertaining to watch. As I said previously, I do crash a number of times. That's part of flying. We all crash. We all bump into things, whether it's fast or slow bumps. And that's, just part of the fun, is that with these type of machines, we can crash, and we really have very, very little to worry about. You can go through chairs, you can go around chairs, you can set up hoop gate. There are hoop gates you can fly from many different manufacturers to allow you to do all sorts of fun things. Maybe you have some friends over and you all have a group of TinyHawks, and you can have a little race inside your house or any of the other facilities that we talked about, an office building or something like that. The battery mounting system that they've switched to is pretty interesting because they used to have a tray that restricted your battery size, and they've gotten rid of that. Of course, that's because they made it 2S capable as well for those more advanced pilots that want that 2S power and feel. This is still aimed at those that are getting started in FPV or something that you want that's very hardy. I can't recommend at this time you buy the original TinyHawk. I wouldn't be surprised if they withdraw it from the market. And I would go directly to this one because as you progress, as you have fun and experience more flight, you may want to experience more performance that we'll be seeing in the future flights that I have in this video. As we near the end of this flight, you can see we're well over 4 minutes with a 520 battery in stabilized mode here. And that allows you, again, to get all sorts of stick time, and so you can improve and achieve your goals. Okay, now that we're outside, we're going to go for a flight. This is again on 1S, and I am in rate mode or acro mode, where there is no self-stabilization, so I'm just kind of running it around the yard. And you'll find, and if you're not familiar with my channel, I do a lot of just flying around the yard and having fun. This is my flying space. I like to duck out back and grab a handful of batteries with me and just go fly for a while. And it's something I've enjoyed for many years. I've enjoyed it over many different quads. There are likely over 400 videos on the channel, and I enjoy flying in this space and being so close to home and just being able to go outside and have some fun whenever I want to. And that's the convenience that you can't really get from larger quads. Oftentimes with larger quads, you've got to go to a space and you've got to make sure it's safe and make sure it's big and make sure there's no people around. Then you have to worry about, if you do have an unexpected crash, is there anybody around that maybe you didn't see, or did someone come into the area where you're not aware of them because during your flight time they came walking through? It happens at parks and stuff, and that's a big advantage. I'm a micro guy, so I'm very biased, but I think micros are much more friendly to those A, getting started, and B, those that are worried about safety, because bigger quads can do a lot of damage, and they can do damage to people in a very serious manner. But I think the 1S performance on this is really quite remarkable. We get good flight performance, good flight time. The one thing about 1S flight performance is that you will find that over the course of my flight that I get higher and higher on the throttle. And that's not uncommon. On 1S flight, that's just kind of how things work when you only have that one cell working for you, that you do end up using more and more throttle as you go through the flight. So those values that you see in the top left-hand corner, those are the throttle values. It gives you an idea of how much throttle I'm applying as I fly through the yard. You can see it's capable on 1S of some pretty good speed. You can also see it's capable of some light acrobatics. You can do flips, you can do rolls, you can do little punches over stuff. You can do longer dives over things. I just don't have anything like that set up. I don't have, I could go over by the chimney and dive the chimney, but there's a tree right over there that I wouldn't want to get hung up in, because quite frankly, I fly over my lunchtime a lot of times because I work a regular day job just like most everybody else, and climbing a tree is not built into my lunch schedule, so I don't tend to do that all that often. But you do get an idea of the performance and how it operates on 1S, and I think it's a pretty good improvement over the original. In preparation for this review, I did take the original TinyHawk out, and I did fly it on the similar sort of batteries, and I do think that Emax made a number of different improvements, not just in readying this machine for the market, but also improving the performance, mainly due to new motors. I did also find that you can turtle mode outside from time to time, depends upon what you end up crashing into and what you end up coming to rest on. Using turtle mode for the most part, but that's going to be a big variable. If you get, say you're at a playground and you get one of those rubberized tire pieces or a wood chip sticking up through your prop, you may find that turtle mode just isn't an option. So when you're using turtle mode, don't hammer the throttle trying to give it a little tip, little punch, see if it responds. If it really doesn't respond very much, then go over and pick it up, because you sure don't want to damage your quad by just trying to flip over after a crash. But it does work quite well, and I'm happy about that. As we get here to the 2S flight, you see that I change my PID profile, and then I go down and I change my rate profile. Now you can change your rate profiles yourself if you have different rates you already want to use, but I'm just showing you how that operates within the OSD, and then when we get back to the desk, we'll use my X-Lite radio as an example of how to get into the OSD and then navigate the OSD so that you can do the same. But that visual representation does tell you, as the big warning card is, when we're flying 2S, we need to switch it up to the different rate profiles that Emax has set up for the machine. You're going to find during this 2S flight that we get a lot of low battery warnings. It comes oftentimes when we hit the throttle very much. You get much over 55% on the throttle, and we'll see that low battery warning come up from time to time. And it might not be readily visually apparent, but there is quite a bit more power and torque with 2S. So if you're someone who's more experienced and you maybe didn't buy the original TinyHawk and you're looking into this one, that if you're wanting to do 2S flight performance, you sure can. If you're starting out, I would get a good handle on 1S flight performance and getting familiar with all the different stick inputs and controlling the machine before I jump into 2S. 2S is not required by any stretch. Emacs has given that capability for popular demand for those more experienced pilots. And I did enjoy the 2S, but unfortunately, as you've seen in the quick roll, the battery is fairly unique in that it uses the PH20 connector, and we only have the one battery that came with the kit, so that made it a little bit challenging in order to get too many flights in. So over the course of a few days, I was able to get in about a half dozen 2S flights, and this one is one of the better flights, even though you've already seen me bonk into, I think it was a tree I bonked into. But again, I want to show you these things because, you know, flight is about having fun. It's not about being perfect. That sometimes we crash into stuff, and that can be as much fun. At least it is for me. When I bonk into something, I tend to laugh. And sometimes many of you that come to the channel quite often have heard me in the audio recordings laugh when I've crashed because you're having so much fun, and then you hit something and you just bounce off of it, that it's just funny to you that you're still going and you're still flying and you're still having a good time. Of course, with 2S, I'm not certain about the performance of this battery, and that's something that I'm going to be revisiting in a future video. I do have some batteries that are 2S capable on the way. They should be in here. They should be here any day, and we'll be able to take a deeper dive at the 2S performance in another video. The first thing I want to show you is the two PID profiles that you see on the screen in front of you. I've also got a dump for the setup that I received, and that is linked in the description down below. And you can use that to recover. Say you change some things and things aren't going very well for you, you can use that dump file in the Betaflight CLI. You can just copy and paste it, enter, type save, hit enter again, and you're right back to the default depending upon what you changed. It should be all fine. I do want to point out these connectors here on the side. They come in through the side, and I think that's an improvement because I did find in the original Baby Hawk that through crashing and apparently vibrations or something that sometimes these would work up. I think it'll also help to keep the motor wires out of harm's way when it comes to crashing in bushes or trees or anything of that nature. You can see we've got the potential for some gaps up here where there is less potential on the new TinyHawk S. Again, these spurs that they have, they're wider and they flare out more. And in my original review, again, of the original TinyHawk, I did have a couple of breakages. You can see some glue right there, and I just didn't have that on this one. I hit it probably as hard, if not harder, because of that 2S flight performance, and it still held together just fine. So the durability has really been increased, and I appreciate that. Also, the turtle mode props, and that works as we would expect for experienced pilots. You'll see around back here where I added some glue to secure my camera because it did come out of its housing every once in a while, and I use this RTV glue that I have right over here. I put some on a little piece of paper, and then I used a zip tie, and I kind of scooped some up, and then I just swiped it up through there until I had a fair amount that I thought would hold the camera in nice and steady, so it should be fine. Also on the bottom, I wanted to point out these rubber bands, they're not very tacky, so if you're familiar with using rubber bands and flying inside, oftentimes when you hit a surface, rubber bands will catch and you'll topple over. Well, these I didn't find really did. It's a little tiny thing, but I was fairly impressed that apparently they chose this particular sort of material so that that wouldn't happen, because with a 2S battery in here, these do come up a bit, and you have that potential to where if you're really skimming the ground, if you get a little too low, that it would topple you like the old rubber band styles used to, but these don't, and we do have those extras in the package as well. And I didn't have any fussing with the rubber bands either. You can probably see in here they have little grooves where the rubber bands stay. You do have to take these 4 screws out in order to replace these rubber bands. Also, I've got some pictures here if you want to take a look at the boards. As I took everything out, and you can see the bind button, and we've got a few extra pads in there. You'll see RX2 TX2, TX2, TX1, and you should be able to use an off-the-shelf receiver. So if you wanted something with more range, or if you wanted to fly a different protocol of receiver, you could do that as well. This, of course, is the other side, just to give you a sneak peek. The button that we have here on top, we can use that to change our VTX channels and bands if we choose to. You can also use the OSD. And to get into the OSD, after you've got your radio all bound up nice and tidy, you just go left stick if you're in mode 2, left stick, mid, and then to the left, right stick all the way forward. That triggers the OSD, and then you navigate going up and down with this, changing values left and right, and then you use this to go back, and then you just kind of navigate your way out. Remember, if you've changed anything, make sure you save and exit. You do need to bind in D8 mode. This is an FR Sky, so D8 mode. That could be a bit problematic if you have the new X-Lite Pro. Does not, at the time of this recording, support D8 mode, so you may need an aftermarket module like I have here in your X-Lite Pro. One other thing I think is very valuable for new pilots to understand is probably your most important switch is your disarm switch. Now, when I switched to the X-Lite, I had to get used to the position changes on the radio. I used to have my disarm switch right over here on the top. Typically I had a much larger radio and all the switches were vertically facing, and so when I would just do that, I'd flick my finger up to disarm. So down was arm, up was disarm. Disarm is your most important switch because when you have an issue where you need to make sure you don't continue to spin your motors and props and cause damage to your quad, disarming is your friend. Now, if you're up high and you've gone into a tree, disarming may not be something you want to do because that could be your only chance to recover your machine without having to get a ladder or a bucket truck or something like that. So in the particular case of the X-Lite that I have here, I moved my disarm switch down over here. And I find that with my finger placed here, when I'm armed in the up position, that I can quickly hit that switch to disarm. That is my most important switch. Everything else doesn't change. Of course, some people use a pre-arm switch. If you're not familiar with that, don't worry about it. That's kind of an advanced feature. It's advanced safety, and I don't think it's necessary for this type of quad. I don't have anything more to say other than if you're an advanced pilot and you're thinking, oh, this isn't for me, this might be the one you need to look at in order to encourage someone else in your life, whether it's family or friends. If they want to get involved in FPV, this is a product that they've improved. It has all the features that one could possibly need in order to start enjoying FPV. So if you hear of someone who's interested, you might want to share the video with them or just refer them to the Emax TinyHawk S. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the section down below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.